Good morning. It is right time for it is 10:20 a.m. on Sunday, October 14th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes and it is Sunday, which means I'm continuing my rewatch of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, the anime, with the season 2 episode The Sigh of Haruhi Suzumiya Part 3. So, we continue this arc with the process of the kids making the movie that we saw as the first episode. And on that note, I want to talk just a little bit. I want to revisit the question of the episode order, and especially because I think that this arc is one of the foremost examples of why I prefer not necessarily taking all of these episodes in chronological order. As a perfect example here, a lot of the humor from the episode entitled The Adventures of Mikuru Asahina Episode 0, namely the episode that is the movie they made, a lot of the humor in that episode comes from all of these strange, surprising things. And then when we watch these episodes and see what really happened, it's a surprise and funny also. It's like, oh, that's how it happened. Whereas if you watched it in the chronological order, what you would see is, oh, I guess that's how Kyon edits it together. Because we see everything that happens, and then we just see the result, which, I don't know, certainly could still be enjoyable, but I feel like the episodes are not designed to have been watched in that order. It makes more sense to me to see, this is a strange product, how did it get made, and then we see how it gets made. I think that's a more interesting sequence than a bunch of things are happening and then here's how they edit it together later. That's just my own take. Obviously, your mileage may vary. This is why the whole episode order thing is a thing with this show. But in the meantime, with this episode itself, we see the development of a couple of things, and things kind of kick into a higher gear in a couple of ways. We begin the episode with them making, they're working harder on the movie, and we have the whole incident where Haruhi has arranged for this colored contact lens that Mikuru is wearing, and we see her essentially asking for, okay, so I guess technically we open with more of them just getting shots and trying to explain different pieces of the story, and, she's obviously making stuff up on the spot to justify what they're filming, which is obviously going to make it very hard for Kyon to edit it together. But I also kind of appreciate, just because I did a filmmaking project as a high school student, and I'm just thinking how, like, this, watching these kids go through that feels very reminiscent of my own attempts at filmmaking. Mainly me and my friends running around in costumes all over our local scenery, and just, filming like, hey, wouldn't this be a cool shot? Let's do that. And it worked pretty well, actually. I mean, I don't think of that. I don't have a copy of that, but that would be, anyway. I get fond memories just watching this process. But also, obviously the big sort of supernatural development in this episode is that we see filming. Haruhi is imagining Mikuru firing a Mikuru beam, and we remember that shot from the original movie, where in that one what we saw was the Mikuru beam, and she does the thing, and then all of a sudden the camera kind of blocks out, and then when we can see again, we see Yuki having apparently just tackled Mikuru, and it seems in that one a little bit like, oh, does she not understand what this is like? Is she not understanding like how to do this fight, and it's just looking awkward, or what? But then what we see in this one is that apparently Haruhi has given Mikuru the actual power to fire a beam from her eye that she doesn't know. And I think it's a really nice touch that it's a laser, and lasers are actually invisible to the eye, when they're just passing through the air. And so to have it be an invisible beam kind of, it ties into some of what Kyon was complaining about with Haruhi in terms of like what is or is not realistic in this student film about a battle waitress from the future. And this idea that she wants realism in some things but not other things. And so it's kind of fun, the idea that you would want someone to be able to fire a beam from their eye, and that the result is simultaneously, oh my gosh, it's really happening, but also based on it being like a realistic beam, it's invisible, which is different than what you expect. And I kind of like the interplay of realistic versus not realistic, and in this whole sort of supernatural strange circumstance. And just, I kind of like that Kyon calls that out too. But in any event, it's kind of suddenly thrilling when we realize what's happening here. What with, we see the camera sort of flash, and then we realize Yuki has, put her hand right in front of it, and we kind of see what's happening there. The little sign, the little reflector board gets cut, and that's a thrilling sequence, and I think is kind of exciting. And so Yuki, forces the contact out, and they pretend to lose it, and that's what leads into some of the rest of it. And then, of course, we see how, the others, Miss Tsuruya and Taniguchi and Kunikita are brought in to be their own bit parts. And so we can kind of imagine we will see in the next episode the part where, they're in the movie. But the other element that I think we want to talk about here is as part of the developing arc, as opposed to just the next part of them making the movie, is we see Haruhi kind of losing it a little bit, right? She's always been kind of bossy and somewhat bullying of Mikuru in particular, demanding, dictatorial. Like, she's always had those qualities, but we see them getting a little bit more angry in this one, and a little bit more manic, and this is emphasized by the fact that she has unconsciously made Mikuru actually firing this beam. And so the concern that everybody else has is, having placed herself in this position of power, this dictatorial power as director of this movie, she's getting lost in the role a little bit in this idea of imagining what she wants the movie to convey, trying to make that happen, and she's losing the boundary between fantasy and reality a little bit, and also getting a little bit out of control. And we can see that developing here. And there's the bit actually where obviously she's starting to hit Mikuru with the little announcer cone, and Kyon actually has to kind of grab her and pull her off, and we recognize that she is losing it a little bit, and the result is a laser that could have killed Kyon and who knows who else, if not for the quick intervention of Yuki. And so it's, I think, hinting at, oh my gosh, this is starting to be dangerous again. And so this idea originally that Koizumi is like, oh, well, isn't making a movie like this better than doing something else that might be more dangerous? Well, it seems like it's becoming dangerous. And also just this idea that they have always been a bit safer than they might have been because of this understanding that Haruhi has a solid distinction in her own mind of the difference between fantasy and reality, because if she didn't, the world would be a more fantastical place. But what we see here is that she maybe seems to be losing that distinction a little bit. And what might that mean? And also just, the arc of her bad behavior and what is Kyon willing and or able to do about it. Well, we'll see when we continue next week with The Sigh of Haruhi Suzumiya, Part 4. In the meantime, I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.